I'm here with Matthieu Kulezak. He's one of our senior analysts on our warehouse team, in charge of a couple products that we produce here, the warehouse building stock database and the manufacturing building stock database. And we're here to talk about one of the insights that Matthieu recently wrote. The title is, "While reshoring is a dominant theme, it is not yet translated into tangible growth in U.S. factory construction." It's a really interesting piece of analysis that leverages a lot of the work that we've done on the manufacturing building stock database. Matthieu, before we jump into what this data says, can you give me a little bit of perspective on what the manufacturing building stock database is, what it measures, and kind of how you produce it?
Hi, thank you. Yes. So this is an analysis that we used to do internally, actually. When we do most of our forecasts, for example, when we look at number of conveyors or drives and motors or how many machines are sold every year, we look at how many factories and how many warehouses are built every year to make our estimation much more precise, right? So what we do here with those reports, the manufacturing and warehouse building stock database, each quarters, we look at building permits, we look at capacity utilization, we look at a lot of different indicators, and we forecast exactly how many new warehouse and how many new factories will get built each quarters in many different countries.
Okay. And what are some of the metrics that you're looking at, or what's some of the data sets that you look at in order to put this database together?
So you were just talking about the insight we just published, and this is more specific to the US, where, for example, we look at the current narrative. We do a lot of interviews. We talk to a lot of manufacturers or warehouse companies. We ask them how's order going, how's capacity utilization going, and then we compare this to real data, and we ask ourselves, is it happening for real? And then that's, for example, a case where a lot of people talked about nearshoring, reshoring. There's a lot of different announcements regarding companies investing a lot in the US. But then when we look specific in terms of accounts, in terms of building permits in the US, that tells a different story. So this is why we put the insight out.
Okay. And yeah, let's dive into that story a little bit. So if you're looking at the building stock of manufacturing facilities going back, let's say, for ease of conversation, let's go back like just after COVID-19, after the pandemic. What does that shape of the graph look like in terms of like the number of new builds, and where are we today?
So it's very interesting because 2018, 2019, they were the last normal year we had. And now what we see is that we're kind of back to a normal year, so back to those levels. So for example, when we look at the total factory building stock, so the complete picture in the US, no matter the size, there was about 3.5, 3.2 thousand new factories built in 2018 and 2019. Then nothing really happened in 2020 because it was a pandemic. And then there was a huge boom where a lot of projects that were put on hold came back online. Finally, there was enough demand to justify building new factories. And then there was kind of a huge rush where a lot of speculative builds got built. So a lot of companies built new factories. They didn't really have someone to rent it, but they still built it because they knew that there would be demand. And the thing is that since then, 2024, 2025 as well, it went down. And now we are back to a normal picture.
Okay. So yeah, in January 2026, you've kind of seen, I guess, from those highs of 23 and 24, we're now back down to effectively where we expect it to start climbing again. So we've hit essentially the low point is your expectation?
So I think we passed the low point now. When we look at all the indicators, we were expecting things to go more sideways now for the end of this year. Now we are more inclined to expect some growth, but it would be more of a normal growth. We are more going from 2.7 to 2.8 thousand new factories, for example. One of the key themes as well is that we look at capacity utilization and we forecast the demand, so industry outputs. And this acts really as a buffer because there's only that many new factories you need, right? So there's more of a case of a lot of companies already have a factory in the US. They used to have some other facilities, subsidiaries outside, and now they're just scaling up. So introducing new production lines or expanding the existing buildings.
Okay, interesting. So it's a lot more like new automation in the same facilities, more brownfield, more retrofit, as opposed to new greenfield projects.
Exactly. It's a very interesting topic that you mentioned with brownfield, because now it's the first months and first quarters where we start to see more brownfield than greenfield work, for example. because the key theme is that the penalty for being wrong, in a sense, is much higher. So here what I mean is that cost of financing is higher, labor cost is also higher to run a factory. And when we look at a lot of different indicators, what we see is that the cost of running a warehouse or a factory is as high as it has ever been, especially with energy price as well. So the cost of being wrong, so to build something that's too big, is too important now to get it wrong. So there's much more questions being asked, sales cycles are longer, and people really want efficiency.
And what does this do from, say, an automation provider's perspective? What should they be focusing on in 2026 amidst the data that you're presenting here?
I mean, so the key high-level themes are always around flexibility, energy management, for example. What's really the case as well is that when we talk to companies that are building new factories, when they start their project, they always have high ambitions, and then they tend to scale it down. So it's really efficiency, getting the most out of what you already have, making things easy to maintain, for example. Some specific topics will be labor shortage, more in terms of maintenance. This is not new, but it's always the case where it's really complicated to get maintenance or maintain a service level. So it's really around being flexible as possible.
Yeah. And if you were to, I guess, get out your crystal ball and talk about how 2026 is expected to perform, we're in April right now. Do you feel as if the situation regarding new builds is improving, or do you expect it to kind of stay the same given what you've mentioned around the high cost of operations?
So what we see now is that we're expecting things to improve, but to an extent, relatively to what happened before in a normal year, for example, in 2019. What we can see a lot is that new applications for new factories are trending downwards. However, there's a lot much more brownfield work, as we mentioned. And in the meantime, there's still demand. So there's still a lot of new factories being built in semiconductors or transportation sectors, for example.
So there's still those bright spots where you're seeing growth in factory construction, but on the aggregate, it's kind of come down to those 2018, 2019 levels.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if someone wanted to get more information around this product, around the warehouse building stock database or manufacturing building stock database, how would they go about doing that and discussing some of these metrics with you?
So the manufacturing building stock database is a report that we update every quarter. This is a very complete picture with a lot of depth where we look at specific names of factories that are built each quarter, and then we relate this to long-term trends. We look at most of the countries in the world and a lot of different sectors, so machinery or end user sectors as well. This is something you can find on our website, or you can directly reach out to me.
Okay. Yeah, and the insight again is titled, "While reshoring is the dominant theme, it is not yet translated into tangible growth in U.S. factory construction." If anybody's interested in reading this, it's available on our website. Under the insights section. Highly recommend giving it a read. We'll be doing more insights related to this topic, to U.S. manufacturing, in the near future. So more to come on that. But yeah, thank you, Matthieu, for going through some of this with us. Highly recommend reaching out to Matthieu if you're interested in discussing the manufacturing building stock database or anything related to it.
Thank you.